When you think about the Roman Empire, your mind probably jumps to legions, emperors, maybe the Colosseum. But honestly, underneath all of that was something even more amazing, and in a lot of ways, much more permanent: their infrastructure. From aqueducts to harbors, the Romans built stuff that has just defied time. So today, we're going to dive into the science of how they pulled it off.
So that's the big question, right? How is it that a modern concrete structure might start to crumble after just a few decades, while things like the Pantheon or ancient Roman aqueducts are still standing strong after 2,000 years? Was it just incredible engineering, or was there a deeper secret they knew that we've only just rediscovered?
All right, let's start with maybe the most famous symbol of Roman power and reach: their road network. And this was way more than just paving paths. It was a massive, systematic strategy for running an entire empire.
To really get a sense of the scale here, just think about this number. At its peak, the Roman Empire had 250,000 miles of roads. That is enough road to circle the entire Earth 10 times over. And these weren't just dirt trails either. These were sophisticated, state-funded engineering projects built to move armies, goods, and information faster and more reliably than ever before.
I mean, the level of detail here is just incredible. Roman roads were a seriously complex, multi-layered system engineered from the ground up to last. They'd dig down to solid ground, lay a foundation of big stones, the statumen, then add a core of rubble and mortar called the rudis. On top of that came a finer, leveling layer, the nucleus, which made a smooth base for those iconic paving stones, the summum dorsum. This wasn't just a road, it was a meticulously engineered structure.
But get this, the layers were only half the story. The real secret weapon was drainage. Roman engineers knew that water is the #1 enemy of any road. So they built them with this slight curve, a camber, so water would just run right off the sides. And alongside the roads, they dug ditches to carry all that water far, far away from the road's foundation. It was this obsession with keeping the whole structure dry that was a massive reason they've lasted so long.
As brilliant as their big-picture engineering was, that's really only half of it. To find the other half, we have to zoom way in, from the scale of an entire empire's road network down to the microscopic level of the material they used. We're talking about their unbelievable concrete.
The comparison to what we use today is just staggering. Modern Portland cement, the stuff that builds our world, is responsible for about 8% of global CO2 emissions. And, well, it lasts for a few decades. Roman concrete, on the other hand, has lasted for millennia. It has a lower carbon footprint, and this is the absolute key, it actually seems to heal its own cracks over time.
For years and years, scientists studying old Roman concrete kept noticing these strange, bright white chunks scattered throughout the mortar. They gave them a name, lime clasts. And for the longest time, everyone just assumed they were a sign of sloppy work, that the Romans were bad at mixing their ingredients or were using cheap materials.
But what if they weren't a mistake? What if they weren't a sign of poor quality at all? What if these weird white chunks were actually the secret ingredient? A deliberate piece of chemical genius that gave the concrete its legendary strength.
And this leads us to a huge breakthrough from researchers at MIT. They figured out that the presence of these lime clasts points to a very specific and, frankly, very clever way of making concrete.
It's a technique called hot mixing. See, instead of first mixing lime with water to make a stable paste, which is a process called slaking, all the evidence suggests the Romans were tossing quicklime, a much more reactive form of lime, directly into their dry mix. This kicks off a chemical reaction that generates a ton of heat, and in the process, creates these unique, brittle lime clasts throughout the material.
And this is where it all comes together. This is the purpose of those clasts. So a tiny crack forms in the concrete. Water seeps in. Now, instead of causing damage, that water actually becomes the catalyst for repair. It finds one of those lime clasts, dissolves it, and makes this super calcium-rich solution. That solution then flows into the crack and recrystallizes, literally sealing the damage from the inside out. It's like the concrete has its own built-in immune system, rushing to heal a wound.
And look, this isn't just a cool theory. The researchers actually made their own version of Roman concrete using this hot mixing method. Then they deliberately cracked it and ran water through it. And within a few weeks, a 0.5 millimeter crack, which is pretty big for concrete, was completely sealed up. The ancient recipe actually worked.
So what's the big takeaway here? Well, the Romans didn't just have one secret weapon. Their incredible success came from a whole system of building for permanence. It was a combination of material science, brilliant engineering, and even good government.
It was the whole package. They had this incredible advanced material.
the self-healing concrete. They paired it with brilliant engineering, like those layered roads and that perfect drainage. But, and this is so important, it was all supported by the state. Major roads were public assets, protected by law, and maintained by special officials. It was this combination of science, engineering, and policy that made sure their work would last for ages.
And that really leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about. In a world that is desperate for more sustainable, longer-lasting infrastructure, we're finding out that the Romans might have had the answer all along. It just makes you wonder, what other ancient technologies are out there just waiting for us to rediscover them, not as museum pieces, but as solutions for our future?